Good evening, everybody. Jacques here from Mortgage Allies. Thank you so much for joining. I hope we have a great time and a great conversation this evening. I think you'll like the information. It'll be helpful to you. So again, my name is Jacques Dupree. I am the principal broker of Mortgage Allies, mortgage prepayment privileges. So first of all, let's chat about what they mean. Before we do that, let's jump into the series that we are currently doing. We are doing the Mortgage Life Cycle Cost series, right? I can see an acronym coming here. But what is it actually? So mortgage life cycle costs are additional non-interest mortgage costs that you could or certainly will incur during the mortgage term. So let me explain in straightforward English, okay? These are costs that are indistinct, so that you can't see them up front, okay? And you normally incur them during the mortgage term. The term, let's say 5 years, you'll probably incur them during that term. And it depends on the lender, very important, the loan type, the loan terms, conditions, the product, the interest rate, and the interest rate type, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so let me give you a good example of life cycle cost. You go to the shop, you look at the cheapest pair of shoes. Let's just talk about, shoes in general. Okay, you pick yourself a pair of Nikes, and it costs you, if you're lucky, $100, and off you go. Right now, your friend says, "Look, why don't you go buy yourself a pair of dress shoes?" And you look at the dress shoes, and the one's $100 pair of shoes, and the other one's $650. And so let me ask you, which one is the cheaper pair of shoes, the $100 or the $650? And I hear you kind of in your head saying, if this guy doesn't know the answer to that question, he shouldn't be a mortgage broker. You're right, except let me explain. So if you look at the $650 pair of shoes, those shoes you can resell them every whatever years you need to. And so the reselling can cost you $25, right? And so those expensive sticker price shoes will probably last you 20 to 25 years. The cheaper pair at $100, they designed to cost you little upfront, so a cheap sticker price. But guess what? They're probably gonna, if you wear them a lot, probably gonna last you about a year, and you have to toss them. So you add all the $100 together, and you compare them to the $650. The life cycle cost of the cheaper shoes is a lot higher than the sticker price of the more expensive shoes. So which is the cheaper pair of shoes? Actually, the $650 pair of shoes, okay? So what we're trying to do is, in the life cycle cost of a mortgage, we're trying to say, okay, what are those things inside the term of the mortgage that you do not see right now, because we're kind of blinded by interest rates, the sticker price. What is it that you don't see that can really, really bite you in your mortgage, okay? And this is the purpose of this series. And you can see mortgage lifecycle costs can significantly exceed the comparatively small interest rate savings between two interest rates. So the one is like 0.01% more than the other, but the other one's got nasty conditions in it. So that's what I'm talking about, right? So this is what we say. If you over focus on interest rates, you will inevitably pay the price for it, because banks know this. They will send you an interest rate, looks too good to be true. You take it, you don't read the terms and conditions like most of us do. And guess what? You'll only discover it later on your term. And then you go, damn, that should never have been happening to me. But it's true, it does, okay? Okay, so let's talk about this here for a second. This word you're called an oligopoly. And I know it's kind of terminology, and it gets boring, I get it. But I want to give you an introduction to it. What is an oligopoly? So we all know what a monopoly is, right? A monopoly means one entity controls everything. It's never a healthy situation. So what is an oligopoly? An oligopoly essentially means there's very few but large entities that control everything. Okay, so, what does that mean then? It means in an oligopoly, they're all so large that if they compete by price, they will actually drive each other into the ground. They're all too big to compete, okay? And it's basically a race to the bottom. So they don't compete by price. They're really interdependent on each other. So what they do is, how do they compete then, right? They compete by image and retention power, okay? So what? So they do not compete by price. They compete by other things, and which is retention power or image. Okay, so well, it's fairly widely written that our banks are an oligopoly. Okay, so they do not compete by price. Okay, so all you have to do is to verify what I just said. Go look at the banks' mortgage interest rates and see how much of a difference there are between the banks. Very, very little. Okay, so if we know that, why is it that we always just look for the interest rate? It's not, I don't think it's clients' fault, because we as an industry are not educating you. If you look at your bank, their website, you will see a lot of information about interest rates. But guess how much detail do you think you'll find on your bank about the actual terms, conditions, and the details of that mortgage product? Almost nothing. Okay. So since we know that banks actually then do not compete by price, then we should really, in that sense, stop just asking the interest rate question. Okay. And I say this graciously, the amount of clients that'll call me, or not new clients, new people call me off on website and say, hey, what's your lower rate? Don't introduce himself, nothing. What's your lowest rate? And I go, oh gosh, it's the wrong question. Let me help you. Okay. And so we would be much better off if we start asking more questions about the terms and conditions, the potential limitations and costs. And I can tell you, here's a tip for you. If you ever want to find out if your mortgage professional cares for you, ask these questions. If they don't like the conversation anymore, guess what? You got the wrong person. Okay. Because remember, mortgage education is not just an interest rate over an email. That is not mortgage education. It's explaining to you what you should be careful of. That is education. Okay. All right. So let's look into specifically what prepayment privileges are. It is the amount that you can pay by choice, additional to your regular payments without incurring a prepayment penalty. So how much you can pay extra, and you will not incur a penalty. Okay. And so there are normally two options for doing that. The one is increasing your regular payment. So let's just say your payment is $1,500 a month, and you want to increase, and the bank allows you to increase your payment by 10% per year. Then it's 10% of $1,500, which is $150. Your payment becomes $1,650. That's your regular payments. Lump sums are essentially random. Let's just say the bank allows you to pay 10% of your original mortgage balance every year extra, and your mortgage is $300,000. That means you can say 10% of $300,000 is $30,000. You can pay $30,000 extra over and above your normal payments and lump sums. Okay. Now, the terminology really, really matters, okay? Because this is what we call regular payment increases. We call this lump sum payments. Now, the industry, just like any other industry, the mortgage industry is fraught with slang, okay? So a lot of banks will call this one the prepayment privilege, where actually the true definition is the combination of these two are the prepayment privileges. Okay, so be careful about that, right? So again, they'll use slang and call the lump sum payments the prepayment privilege. Okay, where actually the combination of two is the prepayment privilege, and this is lump sum payments, and that is increasing your regular payments. So be on the lookout for that. Okay, it's very important. Okay, so let's give you a general but absolutely very important things that you need to know about prepayment privileges. Okay, there is when it comes to variations here, you can see here this varies significantly between lenders. Okay, so don't for one second think, oh yeah, it's all the same. It is not at all. Okay, and do not assume anything about your prepayment privileges. I would probably sit here and do a webinar with you and say that I think that almost every thing that I talk about is the most important thing about a mortgage. Okay, I understand that, right? But I'm going to tell you, prepayment privileges is what gives you the flexibility in mortgage, and they are so important. It's really important to know what they mean. So make sure that your bank allows you to make payments. Do not assume it, right? And read your terms and conditions, because it is not always clear, right? So find out what your minimums, your maximum, the timing, the frequency, if there are any fees surrounded, penalties, payment reductions, blah, blah, blah. Make sure you understand those things, Okay, so this is what I want to show you all beyond the text. Now, I'm in the mortgage industry. I'm going to tell you, I do not find mortgage terms and conditions to be straightforward. I do not. Okay, I'm not suggesting there's a cloak and dagger game going on. Not in any way. I'm just saying to you, they're not easy to understand. If I'm in the mortgage industry for 17 years and you read through it and you go, what does that really mean? Okay, then somebody who's not in the mortgage industry, just like if I walked into your job, I'd probably have the same problem. It's like if you're not in the industry, you're probably gonna have to read triple checks. Okay, so let's see here. Understand what your terms and conditions mean. There may be a lot more detail beyond the text that you just see at face level. Okay, so watch here. Here, I'm quoting from a very big bank terms and conditions here. I like literally verbatim took them out of their agreement. Okay, it says you may pay up to 10% of the original mortgage amount, okay, once in every 12-month period, starting on the interest adjustment date. So most people don't know what that is, okay, or the anniversary of that date. Okay, so, all right, it says, is there a minimum? It doesn't tell you that, right? How can I pay that? Who do I contact then? Okay, what happens if will somebody warn me if I go over? Right? It doesn't tell you any of that, right? And then it says here, regular payment increases. You may once in every 12-month period, starting on your interest adjustment date or the anniversary of that date, increase your regular payment, right, by an amount of 10% of the principal and interest portion of your monthly payment amount. Okay, so if I increase my payment, can I reduce it again? It doesn't say that. Is there a minimum? It doesn't say that, right? So can I do it if I do biweekly payments? It doesn't tell you any of that stuff. So what I'm saying to you is that I always say that the three little lines that you see here is not telling you the full story. Make sure somebody interprets it for you and keep on asking questions. The problem is if you're not in the industry, if somebody explains it to you, you don't know if they're telling the whole story. I'm not suggesting they're withholding information, but they assume stuff. It's like it's a very dangerous thing we do in our business is because I do it every day. I assume everybody knows, and I become kind of, unintentionally, I become sloppy, right? Because I know it, so therefore everybody knows it. So it's important to know, to be careful of that. Okay, something else. Okay, so what happens when you pay extra, whether you do lump sums or pay, increase your rent? What actually happens, right? Before we do that, we have to define what most Canadian mortgages are. Okay, we have what's called blended payment mortgages. So if these are your mortgage payment, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. Okay, and let's just say this is 0, and that's 25 years in your mortgage. What happens is you pay a mortgage kind of like this. Okay, so in the beginning, if this represents your entire mortgage payment here, in the beginning, you pay, it feels like you're paying no principal. It's not entirely 0, right? You pay almost no principal off. But as you go towards the end, look what happens. You're paying more and more principal. Towards the end, you're paying almost no interest. You're paying all principal. But here's the key. In blended interest rates, the payment remains the same if all things remain the same. In other words, if your interest rates remain the same, which they don't, for the 25 years, your payment will remain exact. If it's 1,500 in the beginning, it'll remain 1,500 right until the end. But inside the payment, more and more and more goes towards the principal and less and less goes towards the interest. Okay, so important to know that. So now, what happens if you pay more? Okay, what if you put a lump sum down or you increase your payments? What happens is the payment, okay, your minimum mandatory payment still remains the same, but inside that payment now, more goes towards the principal, which is a good thing, okay? And your amortization drops off. So let's take another example. If you have a 25-year mortgage and you pay $1,500 a month in your mortgage, and you decide to increase that payment by $200 a month, what'll happen is the minimum payment will still be $1,500, but you won't have a 25-year mortgage anymore. You will now have a 19 years and 6 months mortgage. Okay, so it pulls in the amortization. So in other words, it's saying to you, if you pay more, you'll pay your mortgage off quicker. Where some people think if you pay more, then because the mortgage balance now becomes less, your payment becomes smaller. It doesn't. Your payment remains the same. Your minimum payment remains the same, but the time it's going to take you to pay mortgage off, that reduces as you go down, okay? So in other words, you reduce your amortization while your minimum mandatory payment remains the same. And of course, what happens is if you buy a house for $800,000 and you have a mortgage of $200,000, as you pay the mortgage down, you have additional equity. And how much you have more value in that home than what you had yesterday or the month before, etc. Okay, that's important for you to understand it because it'll come to another question here. Because people will say, "Hey, Jacques, last year I paid $20,000 extra plus the amount I would have normally have paid to the mortgage. Can I take that out now? I do it." The quick answer is no, you cannot. Okay, in a straightforward mortgage, no, you cannot. You must have that mortgage set up right from the beginning if you want to do what's called re-advanced. Okay, you want to have a re-advanceable mortgage. Okay, so now it's as you pay the mortgage down, whatever you've paid into the mortgage becomes available to you again to draw it anytime you wish. Okay, if you don't have it set up in the beginning, and you may not be able to set it up in the beginning if you don't qualify for it, etc., or by law you're not for some products. Okay, if you want to have it done in the middle of your term, let's say 5 years, you have to refinance the mortgage and pay a penalty to do that. Okay, but I want to say this to you: whether you want a mortgage that is re-advanceable, in other words, having access to the equity in the property as you pay the mortgage down, is you really want to ask the question, what are your goals? The goal is to pay that mortgage off as soon as you can. I want to caution you big time against re-advanceable products, okay? Because they sound amazing. Here's a good example, right? I can say to you, "Hey, did you know you can climb Mount Everest?" And you go, "Oh, that's amazing." But does it mean that you and I can actually buy the backpack and do the training and climb Mount Everest? Probably not. Okay, so in other words, when I tell you the features of a mortgage, it doesn't mean you actually use those features, right? And so in other words, these products are designed to keep you in a mortgage. So be very, very careful if you do it. If you're struggling financially, then I would very much caution you for it. Obviously, it's a longer conversation, but it's important to know there's no automatic way of taking that money back out. So in other words, you better think twice. If you have $20,000 and you want to pay it against your mortgage, I'm not saying don't do it. Gosh, I'm the last guy to say you not to do that. But make sure you have the reserves in the back, in the piggy bank to protect yourself if you're going to go do that. Okay? Right. So next thing here is we want to talk about the start and stop dates. When can you do it? It's based on an annual period. And it's normally between everything in mortgages normally, because there's always some bank that messes with that. Okay. It's each year's privilege starts on the mortgage anniversary date and ends on the day before the next year's anniversary. Okay, here's an example. So let's just say your mortgage closes on the 1st May of 2020, and you decide your first payment comes out 1 month after May the 1st, now it's June the 1st, then basically your anniversary date will become the 1st of May every single year. So on the 1st of May, the closing date, for the next, until the 30th of April, you are able to do the full prepayment privileges. And then when we go to the 1st of May, they renew, okay? Which is a great segue into our next point. They are not cumulative, okay? It's basically use it or lose it. So if you get 10% prepayment privileges and you don't use them at all that year, you lose them. You can't accumulate them to the next year, okay? It's use it or lose it, okay? Equally, what's really cool about it is if you have the 1st of May as your interest adjustment date, on the 29th of April, okay, it's a bit tight, I don't recommend you do it, but technically you could do an entire prepayment on that day, and you can very much on the 2nd of May, you're going to do exactly the same thing because you're still inside 2 different periods, right? I hope I'm clear there. If you have any questions, just let me know. So not cumulative, right? And so the next one is there's something called an aggregate. You don't see this often, but it's actually a great feature depending on the lender. So normally what you'll get is a bank will say you have 15% lump sums per year, and you also have regular payment increases per year, or you have 15% aggregate, meaning that the combination of the two cannot exceed 15% per year. But how the bank applies that aggregate is powerful depending on who the bank is, okay? Of course, what's important to you is if you exceed the prepayment privilege, right? You will pay a penalty. So in other words, what happens if you're over 15% or whatever the bank allows? You will incur a penalty. Now, how I've done a whole webinar of penalties. I highly recommend you watch that and kind of read it. But how the bank calculates the penalties is very important. There's also limitations here, very important here for you, is let's just say you want to pay the mortgage off, okay? And you say, well, I got a 10% prepayment privilege, I'll pay it, and use that 10% and I won't incur a penalty. Some banks are very clear on that. They will not allow the mortgage to be paid off using a prepayment privilege. Okay, so be very clear. Just again, very many nuances. It's important that you read that. Okay, so here's something I find absolutely annoying. All right, is that when you want to do a 10% prepayment or whatever prepayment you want, okay, and it's annoying, but some of it I understand, but not some of it I think is a waste of your time, is lenders do not give clients the ability to do it on the web, okay, which is really annoying to me because you can easily write software to say, it's easy. If a human being can calculate it, software can calculate it, and very accurately, actually, okay? And so you have to normally contact the customer service center to make those changes for you, which is really annoying, okay? What is important for you to understand is that some lenders, and I did a whole webinar last month on it, allows us, the broker, to do it for you. You can think I'm trying to be kind of like self-serving. Remember, I don't get paid for doing customer service for clients, okay? So it's not like I'm getting a new dollar on it. I'm saying to you it's important for you to understand if you can trust your broker to do it for, and if the bank even allows them to do it, whatever it is, we deal with the nuance. Okay, so we can say, don't do it this way, do it this way, it's better for the client. I can ask those kind of things, okay? And if something goes wrong, we can also get involved. So very important to note that. All right, so I'm just looking here, sorry. Yeah, so now we're gonna deal with the regular payment increases, okay? So remember, there's two, right? One is we increase the regular payment by a certain percentage or an amount, and the other one is we do lump sum. So now we're gonna talk about your regular payment increases, okay? So what happens is I use the percentage amount here, but some banks will give an amount. They'll say, you can only increase your payments by up to $400 per month. They can give you an amount. So don't get stuck on the percentage amount, okay? But if they do give you a percentage, and basically you multiply the lender's maximum permissible payment percentage with the mortgage contractual payment. And it's important for you to know it's always calculated on the contractual payment, no other payment. Very important, okay? So if it's biweekly, if you have a biweekly payment, it's not calculated on the biweekly payment, it's calculated on the monthly payment. Very important, okay? So if your $2,000 payment is $2,000 a month and you have a 10% privilege, then 10% times 2,000, your maximum increase is $200 per month. So we add the $200 to the 2,000 and your new payment will become $2,200 a month, okay? So I can hear you ask me, well, is there a minimum, Jacques? You mentioned it earlier. Normally, banks don't have a minimum, okay? So you can literally say, increase my payment by $1. If you really wanted to, I guess you can, right? But I've never seen people do that. But that's a kind of a good thing, right? And then normally you're allowed to increase it once in the mortgage year. Remember, we said it's not calendar year, it is mortgage year, anniversary date, right? So you're allowed to increase it once per year. Now, here's where it gets really interesting, okay? The payment decrease, so we talked about the payment increase frequency, the payment decrease frequency, okay? So if eligible, very important, most lenders usually allow one payment decrease per year. One, okay? So in other words, you can up it once, okay? So let's just say you upped it by $30, I'm picking a random number. Okay, then you get like, oh, something happens, and like, oh God, I don't want to pay $30 anymore. You can reduce it back down to its original value. Okay, but this is what you've got to understand. Some lenders disallow any reductions. Okay, so imagine you got excited and like, man, I gotta pay my mortgage off, and you increase your payment by $400 a month. And you go back to the bank and say you didn't reach your terms and conditions. And you go back to the bank and say, hey, can you reduce my payment, please? And they go, nope. So it's written there, you can't reduce it. That is, in my opinion, could be serious, right? And the problem is those things are not obvious. They are really not obvious. Remember, watch my webinar from last month. The lawyer will make you sign that you've received a copy of the terms and conditions. They will not necessarily review it with you. In fact, most likely will not review it with you. It's really important that you understand that, okay? So do not assume for 1 second that you can increase mortgage and you can also decrease it once a year. Not at all. The problem with also this method is if you increase it this morning by $50 and go, oh man, I should have gone 80. Well, now you have to wait until next year, right? So while one thing I do like about regular payment increases is that it's you can set and forget, right? Increase your payment by $50 and you just set it and forget it. Let it be, right? You never have to go think about it again until you want to reduce it, which is important there. Okay. But it has downsides, as I explained to you earlier on. Okay. Here's what you gotta understand. Some banks will have some variations to their regular payment increase periods. Like for argument's sake, accelerated biweekly payments. Okay. Accelerated biweekly payments. I've shown in a webinar that biweekly and weekly payments actually do not pay your mortgage off quicker compared to monthly. Okay. And you can watch my webinar on that. Okay. Or they do, but it's absolutely like it's minuscule. It's not even worth, like, I'm not talking about like, oh, it's maybe $1,000. No, it's like, it's pathetically little. Okay. Accelerated bi-weekly or weekly payments pay your mortgage off. I've also shown in my webinar you can actually have accelerated monthly payments if you understand the nuance of it. Okay. But so go watch that. But the thing is, an accelerated biweekly payment does exactly the same thing as a normal regular payment increase. And it could be convenient for you, yes, absolutely. And it automates your increases, absolutely. I'm not suggesting don't do it. I'm just saying to you, there's no smoke and mirrors and magic here. It's essentially the same thing, just make it kind of more user-friendly, that's all. All right. Okay, how are you doing so far? I know it's a lot of information here. So now we're going to talk about lump sum privilege. Now, this, I have a kind of like a very cautiously put, this is my favorite. If, I got to say this to you, if you have, thank you, I got your note here, thank you, Stephen. If you have the right mortgage, this could be like amazing for you. Okay, so lump sum payments essentially mean, right, that to determine the maximum, you multiply the lender. Again, the bank can give you an amount, but assuming they give you a percentage, you multiply the lender's maximum lump sum payment percentage with the original, very important, original mortgage balance for that term. So, of course, you're paying the mortgage down. If you start with $500,000, by the end of year one, it's not going to be $500,000 anymore, right? But it's always to calculate, to determine if it's a percentage amount. It's always determined based on the original mortgage balance for that term. So if it's 10%, they take 10% times $500,000, and it gives you $50,000. That means with the right mortgage, you should be able to pay $50,000 a year in lump sums, as long as you don't exceed $50,000 a year. Okay, so with lump sums, banks normally do, or lenders normally do impose a minimum amount. Okay, so in other words, no less than $100 per lump sum payment. They just don't want clients to say, I want to put $10 against my mortgage. Okay, because there's a lot of admin work for the bank, and it charges them. Okay, and so it's important to do not for 1 second think that all these, as I said earlier, that they're all the same. Well, look here for argument's sake. Okay. So how often and when you can make your lump sum payments vary significantly between lenders, okay? You should aim for maximum flexibility. You can see I'm quite passionate about this. Watch here. In the example we used earlier, look what it said here. Almost there. It says here, it says for lump sum payments, you may repay 10% of the original amount once, only once every 12-month period. Okay, so now you put like $500 as a lump sum, and you wake up the next day and you're like, oh gosh, I want to put down more. Now you can't. Why would you do that? Like, it's ridiculous, right? So what you want to do is you want to have as much flexibility. So some banks will tell you 3 times a year, some once a year, some say once a month. You know what the best ones are? When you feel like it. Okay, that is what you want. Okay, but that's always on like best use case. In other words, you don't want to be like every week make a little $50 payment. You're going to irritate the bank and they're going to start charging you a fee for the admin. Okay, so be careful of that. But flexibility is key. Absolutely, absolutely key. Okay. And then thank you, Charles. I got your message. I appreciate it. And then you can see here lump sum payments as payment interest. Now, this is going to sound confusing, but it's not. If you get it, it's life on steroids. I kid you not. Okay. So the very best and very, very, very few lenders allow you to add regular lump sum payments to each payment. This is what I just said. Even though they treat it, it's still a lump sum payment. It looks like it's a regular payment increase, but it's not. You know why? So let's use an example, right? So here's your payment for $1,500 a month. These amazing, I should say, this amazing lender, if you said, okay, I want to increase my payment by $50, but I really don't want to do like a regular payment increase. They will allow you to add $50 on here. So the payment will show $1,550 every single month, right? And it looks like a regular payment increase. It's not. Here's the cool thing about it. You can drop that at any time and start it back up at any time. Okay. It's amazing. This is what I would recommend to my clients. And you will never see that on any mortgage agreement. Okay. That's a nuance, and it's an amazing nuance. Okay, that I would recommend you have, but it's hard to get. In fact, if you explain it to most banks, I'm not trying to be, nasty, they'll be like, what? They would understand it, but it's a nuance you can use. Okay. Okay. So lump sum prepayments variation. So again, it's essentially the same thing, but some banks will give you what's called double up your payment. So once a year in a particular payment, if your payment is $1,500, in that 1 month you choose, you can make it $3,000. You can double it. Okay. It's essentially the same thing. It's great. I get it. I'm not, belittling it. I think it's great. But understanding there's no magic here is essentially you're just doing a lump sum payment. Okay. So you don't have to wait for that one specific month of payment or biweekly payment or whatever. Just do it whenever you feel like it. Just put it on there. Okay. And the same thing with biweekly accelerated, right? So biweekly accelerated, not to go into confuse it too much here, but biweekly accelerated essentially means you take one monthly payment. You have 12 monthly payments a year, right? You take one monthly payment and you divide that into 26 payments if you're taking biweekly accelerate, and you add that little 26 piece by every payment. Okay, so there's no magic. All you have to do is take one monthly payment. Then, if you want to have the same, if you like monthly payments, okay, and which I actually do, right? Then all you have to do is take one monthly payment, divide it by 12, and add a 12th to every single mortgage payment, and ta-da, you have exactly the same thing. Okay, so it's not magic. If you understand the logic behind it, then you're just doing great. Okay, all right. So this is what this looks like. Lots of variations. So let's talk about mortgage planning. Now I'm going to tell you there's a part of mortgages, and this is where I got to say to you, if you only asking for an interest rate, you will not. How do I say this to you? Kind of like without sounding weird, you will not get the soul of the person who helps you. Okay. The mortgage industry is designed to sell you the rate that will get them the business. Okay. We're human beings. Okay. I don't do that. I do not do that. Okay. I can tell you, and I'm not a little angel either. I'm just saying to you, 99% of people will sell you the rate that'll get them the business. Okay. If you do that, if people come very competitive to a mortgage broker, the mortgage broker is like, whoop, I'm probably competing with 15 other people out there. And so they will give you what they get to with the mortgage. They will not teach you how to plan your mortgage. They will not do that. So if you want to help yourself is find somebody you trust and work with a person that you trust. Okay. You will get the best. You really will get and keep them on their toes. Absolutely keep them on their toes, right? Don't let them get sloppy and think they always just have your business. That's not fair to you to do that. But keep them on their toes. But build a relationship that you can trust, and you will do really well. So here's some ways you can plan your mortgage. Okay, so what does mortgage planning mean? This is not financial planning. This is just using the mortgage payment. Okay, the mortgage as planning. So one thing is, as I said, I kind of alluded earlier, when you get a mortgage, flexibility. In your prepayment privileges, flexibility. Remember I said use the lump sum privilege to make payment increases. Okay, gives you maximum flexibility. You can start, you can finish. We learned through COVID, right? You like everything goes just great, and then March 2020 happens, and our jobs disappear, and you're like, what do I do now? If you have set it up like this, whoopity do, you just take it away for a little bit, and off you go. Okay, that's important here. And so here's the thing I want to teach you. A lot of people get concerned about it. Remember, I said to you, how you pay your mortgage determines on how fast you pay it off. That sounds completely obvious, and why am I even mentioning it? But here's the reality. So if I take your mortgage tomorrow and you come to me and say, Jacques, I really want to pay off my mortgage in 20 years. I really do. I don't want to have a 25-year mortgage, Jacques. But you know what? I'm really concerned. I got a young family, and we're probably going to have some kids in the next 5 years, or I'm starting a business. So I'm a little bit concerned I can't afford that payment. Right now, we're good. Okay, but I'm really concerned about that payment. So here's what I would then, one of the things we could do. You want to pay it off in 20 years. And I'll say this to you. I'll say, okay, why don't we make it a 25-year mortgage? And you go like, no, 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 no. Remember, John, I told you 25, 20 years, buddy, not 25, okay? And I go, I hear you. Give me a moment here. So what we do is we get your mortgage approved at 25 years, okay? In other words, you have the right to pay that thing off in 25 years but you can't take 30 years. You gotta pay it off in 25 years, okay? So then what we do is the day after closing, in our example, we said we're going to close on the 1st of May, 2023. Okay. We close on that day. The next day, in fact, before, I'm going to have you sign a form that I then manually go to the bank and change your payment to be a 20 payment. Okay. So what have I just done? Okay, I've done this. Watch. I'm going to find myself a spot here. We go 25-year mortgage, right? Everything is all things equal, right? I'm not talking market and all that kind of stuff in consideration. We get you a 25-year mortgage. Then the day after closing, I change your payment to be a 20-year payment. Okay. So then if you continue with that payment, guess what? You're gonna pay your mortgage off in 20 years. But by doing it this way, if after 2 years you start your business and you have a family, you're like, gosh, what if I start, you're gonna lose one income a year right now? It's gonna be quite tight. If you do that, guess what? We ask the bank to move your mortgage payment back to the 25 years until you're back on your feet. Then you go, Jacques, hey, can you take it back down again, please? And there we go again, right? So you can do that. Now, you got to be careful. You go to 30 years, then new rules come into play and you're going to have a higher interest rate and all that kind of stuff. But this is something you need to consider. I always tell my clients, I'm a mortgage-free, you didn't say I'm a mortgage-free freak, okay? But I'm also a realist. And I've learned this. You cannot eat idealism, okay? If you want to pay your mortgage off in 20 years, I am right behind you cheering for you. But I want to cheer for you all the way. Don't be idealistic and then you burn yourself. There's going to be no loss to get a 20 or 25-year mortgage. At least you have the flexibility. If you take a 20-year, you have no flexibility. That is your minimum payment in 20 years, okay? Now, I can talk to you about contractual amortizations and actual amortization. Those I would literally we'd hear for you'd fall asleep and we would hear for a month of Sundays. Okay. So your mortgage is a planning tool using your prepayment privileges. Okay. If you have the proper lender, very important, and you have a proper provider, such as a mortgage broker or someone else, it's really important that you let them help you, okay, and to plan your mortgage. Okay, so I'm going to do a market update, but I truly hope you've learned something here. I know there's a lot here. You're probably not going to remember all of it. It's going to be on our website. Here's what I hope you got. You got something to kind of trigger your appetite to say, wait, I got to look more into my mortgage. I'm not just going to ask for an interest rate over the web, okay? Go ahead. I got a website. That's why we put the stuff on the website. But you will not see interest rates on my website because interest rate rules are not straightforward like they used to be in 2016. Depending on what you do is the interest rate you get. And you're not necessarily helping yourself when you do that, okay? So I hope this is really going to be helpful to you in planning your mortgage and getting your family ahead. You guys have yourself a great, great evening.